Some movies are so bad they don't just flop, they end things. A whole genre, a whole trend, even an entire studio. It's one thing to make a forgettable disaster, but to fail so hard that Hollywood collectively agrees, yeah, let's never do that again? That takes a special kind of disaster. These 5 movies didn't just bomb, they shut the door behind them, some so spectacularly that nobody even tried to follow in their footsteps. So, Who Framed Roger Rabbit comes out, makes $350 million, wins 4 Oscars, and proves that mixing live action with animation isn't just a gimmick, it's a goldmine. Naturally, Hollywood takes the wrong lesson from this and thinks, you know what we need? A raunchy, R-rated version. Enter Ralph Bakshi's Cool World starring Brad Pitt. On paper, maybe not the worst idea. In execution, absolute nightmare fuel. Originally, Bakshi wanted to make a horror movie. That was the pitch, dark, twisted, something completely different. Paramount buys in, attaches him as director, and this is supposed to be his big comeback after a decade away from feature films. But then producer Frank Mancuso Jr. decides nope, rewrites the whole thing, and turns it into a messy, half-baked Roger Rabbit knockoff with bad sex jokes. Bakshi was furious. The studio was in chaos. And by the time it hit theaters, nobody had any idea who this movie was actually for. Paramount tried to hype it up. They even bribed the city of Los Angeles with $54,000 just to put a 75-foot cutout of the film's animated femme fatale, Hollywood, on the Hollywood sign. Which honestly, desperate and pointless. Because after one disastrous opening weekend, the studio pulled all advertising and let the movie die. Critics hated it, audiences ignored it. And after Cool World bombed, $14 million box office against a $28 million budget, Hollywood took the hint. Nobody ever tried making another adult live-action/animation hybrid again. People love to blame Austin Powers for ruining James Bond, but let's be real. Die Another Day did that all by itself. This was supposed to be Pierce Brosnan's big Bond send-off. Instead, it became the Bond movie that finally pushed things too far. Gadgets were out of control, the CGI was straight-up PlayStation 2 levels of bad, and the dialogue? Just awful. It wasn't just goofy Bond, it was Bond completely off the rails. Technically, it wasn't a box office disaster. It actually made $432 million and became the highest-grossing Bond film ever at the time. But that didn't matter, because audiences had moved on. By 2002, you already had The Bourne Identity, 24 was taking over TV, and suddenly, James Bond looked like a cartoon character. Even Brosnan himself wasn't a fan. He thought the gadgets and effects were too much and actually suggested the franchise go darker for the next one. And that's exactly what happened. The next Bond movie was Casino Royale. No gadgets, no over-the-top CGI, just dead serious Daniel Craig. Die Another Day wasn't just Brosnan's last Bond. It was the end of cheeky, campy Bond for good. Die Another Day is now considered by many to be the worst entry in James Bond's canon, and it's Pierce Brosnan's least favorite Bond movie, too. You know a movie's in trouble when the lead actor only signs on to avoid being sued. That's exactly what happened with Mike Myers and The Cat in the Hat. See, Myers was supposed to make a Saturday Night Live spin-off movie called Dieter's Day, based on his Sprockets character. But after writing the script himself, he decided he hated it and bailed. The problem? Universal had already spent millions developing it. So, to avoid a lawsuit, Myers agreed to star in something else. And that's how we got this. On paper, a big-budget Cat in the Hat adaptation sounds harmless. In reality, it was a nightmare. Instead of playful Seussian charm, the movie crammed in potty humor, adult jokes, and a whole lot of Mike Myers in creepy cat makeup terrorizing children. Audiences hated it, critics hated it, and most importantly, Dr. Seuss's widow hated it so much that she banned live-action adaptations of her husband's work forever. This thing got obliterated at the Razzies, picking up 10 nominations, and while it technically made its money back, $133 million on a $109 million budget, its legacy is permanently toxic. Since then, every Seuss movie has been animated. because no one is ever risking another Cat in the Hat disaster. Some flops ruin a director's career, some kill a genre. And then there's Heaven's Gate, a movie so disastrous it destroyed an entire studio and ended Hollywood's golden age of auteur filmmaking. Michael Cimino was riding high after The Deer Hunter swept the Oscars. United Artists handed him complete creative control for his next movie, an epic western that was supposed to be the next Gone with the Wind. What they got instead was 3 years of insanity. Cimino rebuilt entire sets because they didn't look right. He moved actual trees to perfect his shots. He forced actors through 50 takes of the same scene. By the time he was done, he had shot 220 hours of footage, blown the budget from $11 million to $44 million, and delivered a 3-hour and 39-minute mess that critics shredded. The movie made $3.5 million. That's it. The studio collapsed. Cimino went from Oscar-winning genius to Hollywood's most hated man overnight. He spent the rest of his career trying to claw his way back, but by the 90s, he was directing straight-up flops. By the time he died in 2016, he was a recluse. Chris Christopherson, who starred in the film, later said, "I think it was a really beautiful film that got clobbered. And it was so long a production that there was plenty of time to get down on Michael Cimino." For years, Robert Zemeckis was convinced that creepy, dead-eyed motion capture was the future of cinema. And for a while, he actually got away with it. The Polar Express, Beowulf, A Christmas Carol, he bet big on this tech, even got Steven Spielberg to use it for The Adventures of Tintin. And then Mars Needs Moms happened. This movie bombed so hard, it didn't just lose money, it ended an entire studio. It cost $150 million to make and only brought in $39 million, an absolute disaster. 9 months later, when Tintin came out, all those big sequel plans were gone. Meanwhile, Zemeckis' Image Movers Digital, his entire studio built around motion capture, collapsed. 450 employees fired, every project canceled, and the company shut down completely. And sure, motion capture is still used in blockbusters today, but that whole uncanny valley, dead soul animated humans thing? Mars Needs Moms single-handedly killed it.